All right, now that we have a nicely grounded photo, I am going to show you our finishing touches that we used on this particular photo. So I'm going to actually crop us a little bit more just to make us a little more center of the photo. A little more focus. There we go. Something you also need to take into consideration is how in focus you are and how in focus is the background. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take our layer, background layer, I'm going to duplicate it, filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and just find a background that would make more sense because the background was quite in focus and I wanted it to look a little out of focus. I put a layer mask on the background layer and then we're going to paint it back so that the water's more in focus. There we go. That looks a little better. I'm going to merge that down. Good, so I still have our, I'm going to call this Ursula layer. Background layer. Call it background 1. So now we're going to go to liquefy. And I want to clean up a little bit of these areas. So I really want my hair to stand out a little bit more. So I'm going to do a little bit with that, make the crown a little bit bigger. I love these curls in front. Make those a little more stand-outy. I don't like this, so although I won't be able to get rid of it completely, we're just gonna clip that back a little bit. I like to make Layla's hair a lot bigger. There we go. Maybe make my dress come out a little bit more. And then I grabbed some of my hand. Let's bring that back in. And don't judge. I'm just going to clip my chin in just a little bit. Layla's tail was very difficult to maneuver, so I'm going to even it out a little bit more. If I ever have to make a tail again, I know what to do differently. Because Layla is only 7 years old, I really wasn't sure how I felt about this clam bra, so I'm actually going to make it a little bigger just to cover up more of her skin and move up her tail a bit. There we go. So it's not a huge difference, but as you can see before, I'm going to step forward and after. So just to kind of give us a little extra va-va-voom, I suppose. So now we're going to move on to the finishing touches of the editing. I find that we are maybe a little on the dark side. So I'm going to go to the top here that says filter, camera raw filter, and just brighten us up just a wee bit. So we're going to move up with the exposure, maybe a little bit of contrast, a little bit of whites, and down with blacks, just a little bit more. Let's maybe up the exposure here just a bit. Press OK. Make sure you've selected your people layer when you do that. There we go. That looks much better, although you can see now right here it doesn't look quite right. So let's get rid of that. And so before we do anything else, there's a couple things I would really like to fix about the photo. One of them in particular is Layla's tail. I had to make the tail in 2 pieces, and that was quite difficult, but it was what was needed to do to be able to get it on her. So what we're going to do is fix this seam. So using our clone stamp tool, I'm going to just fix that seam and make it a little more smooth, as it really wasn't a very easy tail to make. There we go. The scales make this a little bit harder, of course, because why would anything be easy, right? There we go. That looks a little better. Maybe I'll just fix right in here. And that looks a little more seamless. So there we go. One other thing that I wanted to fix was this pink piece here. So we're going to clone stamp that in, as well as what I think could be my stomach. Oh, and I cut a little bit of, there we go. Beautiful. There we go. Now from here, if you go to the basics in my action pack, People Brightener, and press play, you are going to get this white brush. You're going to get one of my favorite brushes and something I use on almost all of my photos, and that's People Brightener. And that's just going to brighten up your subject, add a little contrast, and that actually looks quite nice on your skin, even if your skin is purple. There we go. Perfect. So what kind of drives me nuts about this crown is that it's really supposed to be quite gold, and for whatever reason in the photos it just didn't photograph well. Most likely because it's a metallic. So we're going to merge that People Brightener down with the Ursula layer. Oh, I'm going to rename that Ursula. With our quick selection tool, we're just going to grab the crown. Command U. And I want to up the saturation and up the lightness just to give that crown a little extra. Command D to deselect, just to give it a little extra. Yeah, that looks great. I like to do the same thing with Layla's hair. For some reason, with this wig, sometimes it photographs quite purple, and other times it almost has quite an orange look to it. So this photo seems to be okay, but normally I'd be fixing up little pieces of her hair. From here, I want to add a little more detail into our faces. So I'm going to go to Light and Dark Brush, press play. And what I would like to do is just to lighten a little bit of, oops, oh, that's why. Wrong brush. I just want to lighten a little bit of this eyeshadow here because it photographed quite dark in this photo. Same with my lips. Play with the opacity. There we go. And just want to make sure all of our little finishing touches are done before I move into the skin painting, which I think looks pretty good. Actually, I see one little thing I would like to fix. I want to fix the little piece of fabric in here. This is where I get a little nitpicky and where I think some people find it maybe doesn't matter, but it matters to me. There we go. So because we are Disney characters, I want us to look a little bit larger than life. So now I'm going to flatten the whole image. Press OK. And I want to repaint my skin purple. So I'm actually going to add a layer, this little button down here, add a layer. I'm going to pick a purple and I'm going to paint my skin. And I will tell you why in a second. So we're going to paint my skin. It doesn't necessarily need to be super, super perfect. The reason I am doing this is to just add a little more depth in the purple. So now I'm going to go to my ear. Blending mode, soft light, and you can see the difference. Hard light, you can go to screen, ooh, lighten, also not good. Darken. No, I don't think I like the darken. Multiply. Multiply isn't bad, but I would have to play with that one a little more. So we're going to go to soft light. I'm going to bring the opacity down. And that's just to kind of fill in, I suppose, and maybe make it just a little more even, because once I got into the water and we started taking more and more photos, that purple came off a little bit, so I wanted to add it in. So now from here, I am going to use one of my favorites, and that is portraiture. I have it as a quick action. So I do a portraiture with a layer. So I very much suggest that you purchase portraiture. It is beautiful. It smooths out skin. So before and after, before and after. It's great for newborns, it's great for portraits, great for weddings. And it is one of my favorites. So now we're going to go to light and dark brush. And this is when we're going to start skin painting. I use a Wacom or Wacom tablet. We're going to start with lighten, opacity to, let's say, 15%. And I like my flow to be at about the same. So I'm going to speed this up so you can watch exactly how it happens. Now we are going to move on to darken. So we have done our lighten layers. Now we are going to go into the darken. Here we go. So you can see there's not a whole lot of difference, or a large difference, I should say, between the light and the dark layers. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to keep adding more light and keep adding more dark, and just play with the shadows and play with the highlights. Now that I have the highlights and the shadows where I want them, I feel like we really pop from the photo. I'm going to start running a couple actions that I have created to kind of give a little more oomph to the photo. First, I'm going to add a little more of a flare. To do this, I use Red Giant software, no light factory. I really love the flares I get from this, and actually it's on the one that I wanted. I'll move the scale down a bit. Okay, now this is what I tend to do is I delete it, add a layer, run it again, and then erase off of our faces. But I like that. I like that one. And merge down. So the first one I'm going to use is Brave's Bow. I like the contrast and the brightness in this one. As well, it's got a little bit of a warming to it. I'm now going to use Warm Cup of Tea at 100% opacity. I'm going to double that up. I like it already. I'm going to add a little matte, a slight matte. And put that down to 22%. And then just to add a little more depth in the edges, I'm going to make my own vignette by darkening the edges. There we go. I like to do a pretty heavy hand with this and then back it off. Back it off a little bit. And you know what, now that I'm looking at it, I want to do the color pop and brush. Be sure to avoid your skin with this. I mean, mine's fine because that's purple, but get the tail in there. But see, if I were to do Layla's face, not good. If you've painted anywhere you don't want to, use your black brush. You could paint that away. Though I do like how that turned out. I'm going to adjust the opacity a little bit. And there we are. One last touch I'm going to do. I'm going to flatten this image. I'm now going to double the layer, filter, blur, oh sorry, no, sorry, filter, yeah, blur, Gaussian blur. And right now it's at 3.8, which I actually like. Okay. Edit, fade, Gaussian blur. I'm going to bring that down to, let's say 40%. Add a black layer mask, and with a very soft black brush, brush off the blur from our faces. And so we still have this nice fadey, dreamy blur around us. It's just not on our faces. And there we are. So here we have before and after. Before and after. Thanks so much for watching, and stay tuned for our next tutorial.